welcome to Central Florida Salute YouTube. I am your host, Bob Peters, and I'm here at the Eagles 4273 in Okahumpah, our home base.
Hey, this is Gary Kadow with Project S.O.S, and I'm very proud to sponsor this episode of Salute. We hope you enjoy it.
We have a nice display here of World War II stuff. Some of this is mine, some of this is Irving, some of it belongs to Robin Walker. World War II means a lot to me because I grew up. I'm one of those kids who grew up with uncles that were in World War II. They built my house that I live in. They guided me as best they could. But so I had a real connection with World War II. And I got to tell you, this past June 6th, there was only one veteran there for D-Day. And that bothered me. Not that there's only one left. There are obviously some left, but because of COVID and everything, they canceled everything. So I thought it would be nice to have two of these young fellas and come down here and talk a little bit about World War II. This is one of those magazines, Life magazine, Our Finest Generation. They were talking about you two guys. And my uncle's book, he was in the 100th Division. That was a Connecticut division. He later on was transferred into the Big Red 1, and he hit the beaches of Normandy, where he was wounded twice and received the Distinguished Cross for heroism. Of course, this is a little from a calendar. I blew this up. Those were the big things during World War II. You remember these kind of the calendar pictures?
The pinup girls.
Yeah. The pinup girls, yeah. You remember you were Asco, yeah. Be careful, your wife's over there.
I married.
Oh!
Hey.
Let me see.
Yeah.
Yeah, it looks like her, don't it?
You fit right in there. That's right.
Yeah. So
Mine too.
Yeah, yours too. Oh, that's right. Here's yours. Okay. But anyway, this is a Corsair. This is a magazine, kind of a collector's item. It's D-Day, the Normandy. It's a special issue with Eisenhower on the front. A book about D-Day, and as we look behind you there, that is a painting off my wall, which is going back on my wall, about Normandy. Does that kind of look familiar, fellas?
Yeah, sure does.
Unfortunately, right?
It certainly does.
And underneath there, Robin Walker, that was her father. He was with the 42nd Rainbow Division, and that's a map. We'll talk a little bit about that later. But they were a big part of World War II. You guys know about the Rainbow Division?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, well, let's
They
move.
originated in World War I.
Yes, that's true, yeah.
In New York City.
That's why you're my historian, Wally.
Okay.
Let's move on down the table there. And there's a map here.
See these poles? See these poles?
The landing craft obstacles.
obstacles.
Yep.
They had all these poles with mines on them and barbed wire. They thought we were going to invade in high tide to bring our ships right on in. When our plane flew over and saw all these poles along the beaches, they had to cancel that, and we came in at low tide. That extended the beach another 300 yards, and we took a bigger beating. But if we had come in at high tide, they would have blown us right off the ship.
Wow. So we have Irving, there's one of your books over there. Your photographs.
Okay. This is very interesting. One of our men in headquarters, we didn't know about it, wrote an everyday
Journal?
A journal on every single day of the war of our battalion. So I could tell you every single day where we were, what we did, and everything else. Right from 1943 right on to 1945. Every single day of the war. So I've got a complete, absolute chronological order of every single day of the war of my battalion.
What are these here?
Well, these are down. One of my jobs, basically, I was a staff sergeant. When a plane came down, when we shot down a plane, regardless of who shot it down, if it came down in an area where I was responsible for, it was my job to go out to make sure that the plane wouldn't fly anymore. We put a hand grenade in, and if the pilot was dead or not, we captured the pilot, looking for maps and looking for any place that we could see where the other Germans were. So I took, every one of them had daggers. I brought about with the swastikas on them and everything else with that.
And that's one of your prized possessions there. You talk about this one here in the film, but I just want you to show it to everybody.
Okay.
For the people that are here today, you're looking at a real piece
German
of
Luger
history.
From 1915, original. When we shot down the plane, the handles broke. So I had the Germans make me ivory handles with my name on it. But this is original 1915 German Luger that I carried every single day. Plus the fact that this is so interesting as well. Every day of the war, I carried this, which is a U.S. unit. Because when they're bombing and strafing, you jump into a hole. If a German's in that hole, one of you are not coming out. So I carried this and it saved my life.
That flag, you talk about this flag in the video, but I just want people to see this flag because this is real history here. And how old is this flag now?
Well, it was 80 years ago. 80 years ago that we, you know.
Wow. Yeah.
So
and you got this picture here, but we're going to see that in the video
in
too.
the video.
Oh yeah, I recognize this one. Wally, you recognize this?
Legion d'Honneur.
Does it look familiar?
Yeah, it sure does.
Yeah.
I wonder-
You can only get that if you were a survivor. You know, I did a show with other guy who won that, and he was awarded that. But you had to be alive to get it. You couldn't get it possibly.
Well, let me explain about the flag for 1 minute, please.
Yes, sir.
The Americans stopped at the Elbe River. The Russians went into Berlin to sign all the papers. They were having trouble settling all the towns. Anybody who could understand German was sent into Berlin. I'm Jewish. The Yiddish language of the Jewish people is a derivative of German. So I couldn't carry on a conversation, but I could understand and pick out a certain word. So I would just sit there and listen. But that's how I got into Berlin, and that came off a wall in Berlin. And basically what happened is, this German Luger spoke German very well, went to college, learned a lot of languages, because when they gave me any problem and I held it to their head and clicked it a few times, I could have anything I want.
Okay.
That's it.
We got a few more pictures here. I'm looking for a Colonel Ric Baysinger to come up here. I don't know if he told you guys what these photographs are.
We're talking about the Gordeligen and the...
Okay, you can talk a little bit about that. We got a lot of video to watch too yet.
Okay. Well, we liberated a Holocaust camp. We helped to liberate a Holocaust camp called Gordeligen. And I brought pictures back of the original pictures, but we put together a book on it. Man's inhumanity is the worst thing in the whole world of what they did to people. And we were there watching that and cleaning that up. So it's a terrible situation, but I still go to once a year. They have Holocaust Day at the churches, etc. So I'm invited to go in and light a candle or light a bulb and speak about it. So.
Can I ask you a question?
Yes.
You know Gene Klein?
Yes.
Oh, okay. I did a show with Gene Klein. He's on the YouTube also.
Yeah.
To talk about the Holocaust. You're right. Man's inhumanity to man.
I just did a show on Zoom with 50 teachers around the Virginia area because they're trying to get it into the schools to teach the children what it was and what it is. And oh my God, it's unbelievable. So when I lecture about the war, which I still do every day, I sleep. When I lecture about the Holocaust, I don't sleep that night. And I'm the only one that I know of. I've got a map, an original map of every Holocaust camp going. 2,400 camps, 6 exterminating camps. So if you went into an exterminating camp, you were gone. People don't know this, but on your dog tags, your religion is on your dog tags. So when we got within 3 miles or 2 miles or closer to the Germans, I took my dog tags off because if I'm Jewish, and if they'd have nailed me, I'd have been dead one way or another.
Absolutely.
So, for our viewing audience, you were in on D-Day, so was Wally. Wally is one of those who brought the ships in.
The Higgins boats.
Yeah, the Higgins boats. He dropped, well, he was the driver.
Yeah.
The other guy would drop the gate, and off you went. Did you want to thank him for the ride?
I did. I thanked them all the time. I thanked them from the bottom of my heart.
first thing
Never mind for the ride in. I thanked them for coming the hell out.
Ride out.
Never mind going in.
Doing my 22 trips back and forth in a 90-day period, we took many, many wounded out.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, I looked at some of my records yesterday that were from the ship's documents from each day, and it summed it up, and it said that we had removed over 700 wounded, and many of those too were Germans.
Yep.
They were mostly walking wounded. We picked them up. We used Utah Beach for all of our exercises. And we would, after we unloaded our troops, tanks, trucks, whatever, then the wounded would come aboard, and many of them were German. And I can remember one incident. The Germans were walking to the ship, the big LST, with the doors open and the ramps down and their hands up. And they were lagging. So an Army MP gave the one guy a boot in the butt and told him to get moving, to get on the ship. And this, I think, with the Germans, it was a very common expression. They all said, "Me Ruski."
I'm Russian.
I'm Russian. Me Ruski.
Me Ruski means
I'm only here because the Germans made me fight,
right.
which was a lie.
Yeah, sure. And one more thing talking about that. Interesting enough, the older German men that were drafted, when we surrounded them, they threw their hands up immediately. They didn't want, bitter, don't kill me. The young people that took their allegiance to Hitler, they fought to the death because it became a religion with them. But the older people that took their religion to Germany, they surrendered. Interesting.
Wow, yeah, it is. Gentlemen, this is Colonel Ric Baysinger, who's a relative. What was it, your dad?
My dad.
Your dad. Come on in here so we can pick up the sound. And tell us what you have there, Rick.
What an honor to be able to show these two D-Day veterans. My dad was part of the 668th Topographic Engineering Company. Basically what they did was they created maps and the models that I'm going to talk to you about, but that's what they did, was create maps for the U.S. forces. Very early on, after they got to England, they took out the map makers, and they referred to them as the Secret Six because nobody else in the company knew where they went. And what they did was they went probably to the headquarters, and they created scale models for the D-Day invasion planning, and also for people like their leaders to come in and look at. And so what these are pictures of those maps. I've never seen any other pictures of the maps or the models except in a couple of TV programs. But so what I have here is pictures of the models they created. I also have some of the aerial photographs. They would take aerial photographs and these guys would turn them into scale models. And it's very fascinating how they were trained. My dad and the other guys were trained to show elevation and everything on these scale models. Talking about the Higgins boat drivers, or pilots, the airplanes flying missions, they would come in and they would look at these models. They would get down to tabletop level because they could look and see what they would be looking at when they approached the D-Day areas. And so it's just an honor to be here with these guys. These are the first two men I've been able to show these to and share with them. So what an honor.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Rick. Well, you know what? We're going to take a little break right now. Wally, I want to thank you for, you can see Wally on my YouTube. He talks a lot about military history. He's my expert on military history. And now I got two of them. But we're going to go over there and we're going to interview you a little bit because I want you to introduce the young man who made this beautiful documentary, a historical documentary about you.
Okay.
So we're going to go to the table, and I want to thank you both.
It would be my pleasure.
Okay, let's go. My guest now is Mike Bogonoff, who is Maria's son from Villages for Veterans, and you did this documentary all about Irving, and I got to tell you, I was blown away when I saw it.
Oh, thank you.
You do a great job. You have your own production company, right?
Yeah, MSP Media. Mm-hmm.
What is it called?
MSB Media.
MSB Media.
Yeah,
You're
Michael Scott
basically out of New
Bogdanoff.
York?
Yeah, based out of New York, but I travel all over the country. Any project that had me working in all different types of things, from documentary filmmaking, regular narrative filmmaking, commercials, you name it, promos, anything. I basically handle all the production, post-production, everything.
Well, you did a fantastic job in the video, like I
Thank
said,
you.
we're about to see. But I want to know what prompted you to do this, and how did you meet this young fella down the end there?
Well, Irving Locker and Bernice, his lovely, beautiful wife over there. Basically, known them for a long time, and just fascinated with his story. You know, what the greatest generation has done for this country, and, you know, what we strive to do every year with our military, and, you know, the wonderful things our men and women that serve our country do is just, you can't even put into words. Yeah, well, I basically, you know, knew Irving for many years, and he had a PowerPoint that he wanted to basically have me do a video on, and I basically decided to take that PowerPoint and turn it into a documentary that basically would be more engaging, but at the same time be entertaining, but people and kids like are basically learning without even knowing they're learning something. So by having something that's engaging, they're basically going to be remembering all that information at the same time getting a nice story out of it. And that's basically the premise, and that's what we did with this documentary, and we're very happy the way it came out.
Well, like I said, it's a great documentary. You did a great job. I hope
Thank you.
younger generations, you know, that's one of Urban's goals, yeah, as a younger generation, and I agree with you. You know, Wally has done some speaking too, and especially about the Legion of Merit, right? When you got that, you went and visited schools.
Yes, it was presented to me in Miami, Florida, at the Florida International University, and they had a professor there that was very interested in the European history of World War II. So I gave a little spiel to the students that day in a small group, and the professor said to one of my daughters, "Who is that guy?" And she said, "It's my father." So bottom line was, he invited me back to address and speak informally to his history classes. And a lot of these history students had been with him on trips to Normandy. So that was and it must have came from people that had enough money to support them and see them through that. Yeah. So I went back to 2 different occasions, 2 different years, and we discussed the Normandy invasion.
You know, I am in such awe and such honor to have 2 gentlemen sitting next to me with the Legion of Merit, because I know about that medal. I've had one other guy in all the years I've been doing this, and I've been doing this since the beginning of 2010 up till now, which is 2021, done over 400 shows, and I've never had 2 of you in the same room together. This is quite an honor for me.
Yes.
So anyway, Irvin, what kind of grade would you give him for doing this documentary? Would you give him an A+?
I'd give it better than an A+. It was just one of those things that I wanted to get it done and done right. And I had several people that tried it and didn't work too well, but Michael did a outrageous job. Great, and I'm indebted to him for it.
With that being said, I'm going to do my send-off now. And then my partner over there from the committee, of the Veterans Committee here in the Eagles, is going to show your documentary on the TV over there. So people may have to turn around and see it, but I want to thank you both for coming. I want to thank you, Mike. And like I said, it's an honor what you did. And so join me in how I say goodbye. I know you you know how, because you've been with me about 4 shows now.
Yeah. That's
right.
And Michael, you know, the veterans, we salute like this. Non-veterans salute like that. Okay? So this is how we end. To all our veterans out there, our active military and their families, we salute you. Till next time. Okay. Roll 'em!
D-Day, June 6, 1944. 15,000 young American men jumped from the sky, and 60,000 more stormed in from the sea to save our civilization from tyranny. Here with us tonight are three of those incredible heroes. Private First Class Joseph Riley, Staff Sergeant Irving Locker, and Sergeant Herman Zaitchek. Please.
My name is Irving Locker. I was in the United States Army. I was drafted. I was a staff sergeant. This is my story. I was born November 8th, 1924, in Passaic, New Jersey. I'm the youngest of 7 children, and we were very, very poor because at the time of the Depression, etc., and everybody had to go to work. I'm the only one of the 7 children that graduated high school. My last year of high school, I worked in a gas station, pumping gas, picking up and delivering cars for service, and learned to drive a 40-foot tractor trailer while I was there. And my boss basically was very influential on me. He kept telling me basically that when you're working with a lot of men, if you designate each man to a particular job, the job will get done right, it'll get done on time, in half the time. I was drafted into the war in 1943, and the whole graduating class, of course, we were sent to Fort Dix. Fort Dix basically was the basic training where people have no idea when you're going out of a regular house into basic training and you're starting to take orders. They tell you when to get up in the morning and when to go to bed at night, and it was very, very difficult to do. But that's how we learned to get along with men. You lived in a barracks with 25 people. The AAA Gun Battalion stands for Anti-Aircraft, Anti-Tank, and Artillery. The guns were 9.5 tons, and I could shoot 30,000 feet. But the big thing that people have to know is that the shell we fired was 3 feet tall, weighed 45 pounds. The bullet part of that shell was 11 or 12 inches long. On the gun, when a man placed the shell into the fuse setter, it set the fuse, which means that that would be the height that the bullet would explode. So we could shoot 25,000 feet up. But at that same time, depending on when the planes were there, the fuse setter would explode the bullet, and you'd have 100 pieces of the bullet. So 4 guns would be doing that same thing. So we knocked down quite a bit of planes or damaged them. We were part of the 1st Army in the 49th Brigade, and there were 90mm guns, 12 50 caliber machine guns, and then a motor pool. The motor pool consisted of several trucks. At that particular time, they wanted to know who could drive a tractor trailer. And I said, oh my God, what an inspiration this will be for me. I won't have to march, I won't have to carry a gun, I'll be out of the weather. So I raised my hand and I said, I can drive a tractor trailer. They said, okay, go to the motor pool. And it turned out to be the radar truck. I got there, and there was about a 6'5" lieutenant. Looked down at me and he says to me, what are you doing here? And I said, I want to drive that tractor trailer. He says, you can't even reach the handles on the back of that truck to unload and unload. You're too little, you're too small. get the hell out of here, go to the machine gun. They need little guys like you. And basically there was a little Italian sergeant there who looked at me and he said, oh man, everybody on my gun's Italian and you're gonna fit right in. And I looked at him and I said to him, I'm not Italian, I'm Jewish. He says to me, okay, get the hell out of here. Everybody on my gun's Italian, go to the big guns. When I got to the big guns, we assigned each of the men, there were 4 guns in the battery. It turned out that the sergeant on gun 4 was in the hospital. He was sick. The other 3 sergeants were looking for big, strong guys because this is a 9.5-ton gun and you have to be big and strong. Anybody that they did not want on their gun, they put the gun 4. Where did I go? Gun 4. There were 5 men basically that ran the gun, 5 men to control the gun, and 9 men to control ammunition. The radar sent in cables, a direct line from the radar straight up at the planes, and then a horizontal line to the 4 guns to give us the height of the plane, the speed of the plane, and how far in front of the plane we'd have to shoot. Basically, as far as we were concerned, they wanted a 3-minute level to take the gun apart, then move it, get to the new section, and had a 3-minute level to put the gun back into firing position. The first time we did that, they started out training, moving the gun from one position to another. And it was one terrible situation because of the amount of platforms and outriggers and contacts and everything else that we had to move. I said to the other 13 men, if we assign each man to do a particular job in moving this gun, we can do it half the time and it'll be done right and we ought to give it a try. And they decided, okay. So we all tried it and thank God it worked out fine and no problem. Because of that, I was promoted to corporal because I could organize and vote to motivate the men with my personality, telling them jokes, etc. It took a lot of the excitement away from him. On October 11th, we were shipped to Kadow. We joined the unit and it was on the Queen Elizabeth. And we managed all the big guns. After 6 weeks of special training, getting on the boats, off the boats, we were shipped then to Slapton Sands. That beach was picked because it was the closest thing to Utah Beach where we were going to be shipped to. That became the Tiger exercise. The Tiger exercise is a unit that we could not even talk about. When we were getting on the boats and off the boats and training, we caused a hell of a big commotion around there. And 2 German E-boats came in and bombed 2 of our LSTs and damaged a 3rd. We lost between 700 and 900 people. We were absolutely stricken to privacy. You couldn't talk about it because they didn't want the families to know that boys got killed before the invasion. When we took our basic training in England, there were so many people, and then we went from England into the invasion. Eisenhower at that particular time wanted us to use live ammunition over our head to get us used to the sound, because so many people got PSST and would crawl into a hole and not come out. But people have to understand we had no earplugs at all, nothing. And because of that, unfortunately, we lost a few of our men to do it. This is an absolute Hollywood situation with the Ghost Army. The closest distance between England and France was Dover in England and Sicily on the other end. Along Dover, what they did is they took air-filled rubber tanks and filled a complete division, or a lot of the tanks, with air, and men, and trucks, and planes, and everything that they could. And then they had loud voices from megaphones of the noises that these things would make normally. And what they did is when they camouflaged it, when the Germans flew over, as they did, constantly, and saw that that's where they thought we were going to invade. So it was a complete Hollywood situation that turned great. And then they used Patton's name there, because if Patton was there, that's where we were going to invade.
Irving was the moving spirit of the battery. He was the man of action and accepted responsibility like a kid going after candy. He always got the job done on time. What God forgot to give him in stature, he gave him an extra common sense and chutzpah. He had the ability to move small mountains and was a giant of a little man.
Coming in on these boats, we came in on the Higgins boat, and people have to understand, the sailors that were driving the Higgins boat would drop us off, pick up our sick and dead men, take them back to the boats. So they were totally exposed. When we were coming in, we were about 11 feet out of the water. The sailor said to the lieutenant, "You better get your men ready because I'm going to drop this door pretty soon." So the lieutenant walked over, took out his .45 and said to the sailors, "Listen, you better take this boat in so my men don't drown or you're never going to see your family again." I'd like to tell you what he really said. Of course, he took us in. But once he took us in and dropped that gate, and we hit that sand and he hit that water, it was unbelievable. I've never seen as many dead men in my life as I did laying along those beaches, etc., to get in. And when we hit that beach, when they kept hollering the same way, "Get off the beach, because on the beach you're a victim. Off the beach you're a warrior. Get off that damn beach." Because of the training that we did, and because of the fact that our guns were on tracks, wheels, that we could be moved, we were the first battalion picked to hit Utah Beach, to protect that beach and protect the men because of the shooting, because of the strafing, because of the bombing. Now, Rommel, who was the top man under Hitler, was going to put tanks on the beaches to keep us out. One of the reasons we were picked to go in, because we had the only ammunition that could go through the armor on a German tank. We talked about a 3-foot shell that we fired. When you put an armor-piercing unit in that same shell, I could go through the armor of a German tank, like a piece of glass breaking. With Normandy, we went in on Utah, and there were 5 beaches. Utah Beach was all the little marks, or mines. They had mines every place you can imagine. And there was one central place, of course, that the Germans knew where the mines were not. But that's what we went into, and of course, the infantry went in, the special engineers went in to try to get those mines out with all kinds of tanks and different things to get us into the unit. Then they had a big Atlantic wall. On those beaches, they had big guns and had everything under bunkers. The big thing that we had talked about as far as the bunkers are concerned, they had Goliath tanks. Now, we have never seen the Goliath tank. The Goliath tank basically was 2 foot by 3 foot by 5 foot long. It could go underneath our tanks, wire controlled, underneath our tanks and blow us up. In addition to the tanks, they had poles in the water. They called it the anti-landing barges, but they were all poles mined and had barbed wire across the bottom. Now, they thought we were going to come in at high tide. If we came in at high tide, the poles would blow us to hell. When our observation planes flew over and saw these poles, instead of coming in high tide, we came in at low tide. But the fact remains, at the low tide, it extended the beach another 300 yards and exposed us at that point. When our planes bombed the shoreline, they knocked down the poles, but the mines were still on them and the barbed wire was still attached. That's why we had such a big difficulty getting in and getting that beach under control. The big thing that everybody has to understand, there was 105,000 tons of supplies. Now, we lived in a field. We couldn't be near a city. We couldn't be near a building because of the velocity of the gun. We'd blow out windows, break down walls. So we had to live in a field. Everything had to be brought to us. Food, ammunition, medicine, clothing, boots, everything that we needed. On D1, we shot down 16 enemy aircraft. Now, basically, we were pulled with what they call a caterpillar, a full-track unit to pull us, because the gun was 9.5 tons, and they had 14 men that manned the gun in each caterpillar. So everybody had to be in that caterpillar and through the mud and the snow and the ice. Because I was top gun, I was promoted above all the others. They gave me my basic training to a staff sergeant. They needed a staff sergeant on all the 4 guns, because when we got a march order, we would tell the gun commanders to put the guns in a position to move and attach to their caterpillar. But then I would go to the new position with the captain or one of the lieutenants and lay out the new position for the gun. In other words, a gun would be north, south, east, and west on a particular field. Our biggest problem basically was the Germans used signs and used anti-tank mines. And what they did is to slow us down and to knock us off our beat was they put big signs all over the place, on the roads, in the fields, every place, Achtung Minen, which means there are mines. As you didn't know whether to believe them or not believe them, but you had to believe them to that point of not gambling on that, taking that kind of a chance. So that really slowed us down, even to the roads and the fields, even to the point of men. Everybody knows what happens when you step on a mine. You lose your legs, you lose your arms, you lose your life. Now, I had a lot of initiatives. Now, I'm Jewish. The Jewish language is a descendant of German, so I could understand a lot of the words. I couldn't speak their dialogue. I couldn't get up and talk German to somebody who knew it, but I could understand a lot of words. So it became part of my initiative to the point that when we landed in a field, the captain would come over and say, "Okay, Locker, now that your guns are set, take a truck or take a detail and go out and see what's around that you can find that we can use." So I would go to the barns with the Germans there, talk to them about hay and straw, etc. One of my big jobs, basically, is if a plane came down in my area that we shot down, I would go there and make sure that the plane wouldn't fly anymore by putting a hand grenade into the plane to blow it up. And if the pilot wasn't dead, we captured him. That's how we took maps away from them. That's how we took different things away so we could find out where they were stationed, where they were, and all of the different things around them. But one of the pilots had a German Luger. When the plane crashed, the handles broke. So I took it away from him and had the Germans make me ivory handles with my name on it so that I carried that for the whole rest of the war. So when I walked into a barn to get hay and straw or something, and they gave me any kind of a problem, when I put the Luger to their head, the Luger spoke German very, very well. And I clicked it a few times and they said, "Okay, you can have anything you want, just don't kill me." I became the procurement officer, which means the biggest crook in the outfit. So I would go out and steal whatever I could from my men. And with that, I found sandbags, because we were totally exposed. I put sandbags around the gun to protect my men. And then, of course, when our planes bombed the German barracks, I found 2 rooftops. Took the rooftops, took them back to the outfit, cut them down, extended the sandbags, and put a rooftop over so my men wouldn't have to dig foxholes and they could get in there. And one of the men who was in my outfit, Kellerman, was an electronic genius. He even put lights in there for me so that my men could read and relax when we weren't out firing the guns. We had no toilets, no sinks, no showers. I went to one of the barns, and of course, living in Passaic, New Jersey, I didn't know what an outhouse was. But going to the farms, to the big barns, I saw a little house alongside of a barn. When I opened the door, there was a board with a hole in it. Took it away from the German, brought it back to my outfit, extended the board, put hinges on it, made a 5-holer out of it so my men could sit down at least to move their bowels. People have no idea what it is to live in the field with no sinks, no showers, no nothing. The next time I went there, basically I found a man watering his fields. I took it away from him, or I borrowed it, whatever the hell you want to call it. Took it back with the pipes, with the everything else, the hoses. First time my men had a shower in 3 months. So the colonel was there, the captain was there, and everybody was there complimenting me. The Red Ball Express basically was every time the trucks would drop us off or the equipment off, They would go back to the port, drive at night, 300 miles, 200 miles, 100 miles, whatever it is, to pick up the supplies, pick up food and water and medicine, whatever they had to do to bring it to us. We couldn't figure out at the time how the Germans knew where we were, because we were located out in the field. When the Red Ball Express would come to deliver to us, it raised the dust in the road. Once they raised the dust in the road and then they stopped, the dust settled. And once the dust settled, they opened fire. Thank God they didn't hit us. But once they started to fire on us and we found out how they knew where we were, the Red Ball Express couldn't come in at all to the field. Had to stay out on the main road, and we would send our trucks out to get the supplies. After that, we were sent to protect bridges, to protect this, to protect that, any place they needed. The German saturation, December 16th and 17th, was the worst part for us. The Germans had their last chance to come out with the Battle of the Bulge. You had 200 planes that came over firing at us. We shot down 40 planes from the 7th Corps. The temperatures went down to 0 and below. And believe me, when people have no idea, living in the snow and the ice, even I got a touch of frostbite. Until today, I take pills because my hands lock and my legs lock and I don't sleep at night. We'd gotten into the Ardennes forest and we were besieged near Bastogne. The Germans had taken 25,000 prisoners and destroyed over 350 of our tanks, and it was really the worst situation that we hit. And that's when Patton, with all his tanks and everything else, pulled us out and saved us from the Battle of the Bulge. Every foot was paid for with human lives, and Bastogne was never captured and the siege was broken. That was the end of that siege. Any of the Germans who could speak English were put into a special division. What they did is they captured the Americans. They took the uniforms off of us. Anybody who could speak English in the German army was issued a uniform like that. When you ask a German to hold up 3, they use their thumb. We don't. The way they eat, the way they drink, when they smoke a cigarette, they use the 2 fingers and the thumb. We don't. So they had to change all of that. But they had a complete school to teach them English, to teach them how the American soldiers would be. Even to the point of putting them in wherever they had captives of American prisoners. Once they issued the American uniforms to these Germans, they put them into there to learn how to curse, to learn how to talk, to learn who was on television, to get them to be American. Because what happened is, when we got march orders, we would travel at night. They give you a map, you're in a strange country. If an American MP is there, and he says that road is out, or that bridge is out, or this is, you can't go that way, you gotta go this way. That's how they captured us, that's how they killed us. So it was wonderful on their part until we found out what was going on. And worked our way all through France into Germany. And we stopped at the Elbe River. Anybody who could understand German, again, at that particular time, was sent into Berlin to try to settle, because the Burgermeisters, which were the mayors, were all trying to get the jobs done and etc. So they were all fighting to get the job, to get that position. So we were sent in to try to settle them out and get it done. So basically I would sit there and listen for about 3 or 4 minutes and then pound on the desk, and then take out my Luger, which spoke German very, very nicely. And by the time I got done, it was over and I could go back and go to the next town. We helped liberate a Holocaust camp called I am the only one that I know of who have a map of every Holocaust camp going. There were 2,400 Holocaust camps, 6 exterminating camps. If you were sent to an exterminating camp, if you were Jewish or something, you were gone. But otherwise it was all labor, because all the German soldiers were fighting and everybody that had no labor to do it. It was all labor camps, and they were starving them and punishing them. It was finally over, and the Nazis surrendered. End of the war. We were credited with 75 enemy aircraft that we destroyed. That was the 116th AAA Gun Battalion. When I came home, everybody made a big fuss over me. When I was in Berlin, I took a flag off a wall. I had a lot of my men sign it, and I brought it back with me. To me, it's a memorial to the men, because most of them are dead now. When I lecture and I show the flag, I get calls from people. You brought my grandfather back to life, you brought an uncle, they see a name on it. And I got the Luger, and I've got grenades, I've got daggers with the swastikas on it. And then I got a call from somebody here. I wear this cap. And I met a young man here in the villages. He said to me, gee, my father was in World War II, and I was only 5 or 6 years old when he got killed, and I never even got to talk to him. I said to him, I've got all these things. Come over and I'll explain everything to you. Now, I must tell you this. Somebody in my outfit, in my battalion, wrote a chronological order of every single day of the war. We didn't know about it. Kept every record so that I could tell you every single day where we were, what we did. After the war, it was printed in German and then translated into English, and everybody in my outfit was given a copy of that book. When I talked to that man, and I gave him my card and told him to come over, 2 weeks later he called me. He says, you're not going to believe this. I found your name in my father's army book. He was in my outfit, in a different battery than me, but he was in my outfit, and it was such a human situation. I then went in and took a look at the flag that my men signed. His father signed that flag. When I called him up on the phone, he came over with his wife and children and took them, just held it to their cheek and cried, because we brought that back to him. And even the children of the men that were in my outfit call me now, and we send them pictures of the flag. When we talked about the fact that the Germans blew up, the Tiger exercise blew up those ships, they put a tank on the beach to memorialize that situation. I was rewarded the French Legion of Honor, and everybody had heard about it there, but nobody had seen it. So everybody was taking pictures of me, and the women were kissing me and hugging me. And while we were in Normandy, all the children were wearing red T-shirts. I am a child of freedom. Merci, dear veteran. Our American kids know nothing about that. Everybody in the schools, and I went to the teacher and I said, I've got to buy one of those shirts to take home. This kid said to me, you can't buy this. He took it right off his back and handed it to me. He said, you take mine. I bring that to every place I go, if I can get into the schools to show the children, I am a child of freedom, mercy, dear veteran. I was honored by the State of the Union. President Trump invited me to the White House, and he called me a hero of World War II. and had a nice long talk with him and kibitzed and joked. And I was invited to the 75th anniversary, and the President of the United States was there at that particular time. And the amount of people that we met and the amount of people that we became acquainted with that still call us till today. I was with the granddaughter of President Eisenhower. I was with the granddaughter of Patton. The fact remains that I want people to know, I want people to understand that freedom is not free, and the amount of men that were sacrificed, and not only in death, but in arms and legs and wounded and everything else. To me, I'm trying to give back whatever I can.
Since 2009, Project S.O.S. has assisted our veterans both overseas and here at home to overcome medical issues, homelessness, and disabilities. Initially, our efforts resulted in over 22 clinics opened in Iraq and Afghanistan. Recently, as troops have been withdrawn, we have concentrated on issues here at home. During this past year, we have been able to distribute 42 motorized wheelchairs and numerous mobility devices to our local veterans who have served in World War II and up to and including Afghanistan. We continue to offer solutions to our local homeless veterans in the Ocala National Forest and other Central Florida locations. Project S.O.S. Support Our Soldiers needs your assistance to continue helping a growing homeless veterans population. Over-the-counter medications and personal hygiene supplies are acutely needed. Your financial aid will greatly increase the support they so desperately need.